The sky bled amber through the industrial haze that choked the upper reaches of Hivterte. Manufacturum waste mingled with the acrid tang of unwashed bodies, and desperation in the underhive where billions toiled in service to the God Emperor. Among spiralling Gothic towers and teeming masses something fell. Not with the thunder of orbital debris or the scream of enemy ordnance, but with the quiet confusion of a single man. Peter Parker crashed through 3 levels of corroded walkways before his reflexes caught up with his consciousness. His fingers found purchase on a gargoyle jutting from a ferrocrete column, muscles straining as his descent halted with violent abruptness. Blood trickled down his forehead, soaking into his mask as his enhanced senses bombarded him with unfamiliar input. The cacophony of industrial machinery, the stench of prometheum and decay, the oppressive weight of 1 billion souls packed into artificial mountains of steel and stone. "This definitely isn't Queens," he muttered, pulling himself onto a narrow ledge. His costume was torn in places, revealing the pale skin beneath. The iconic red and blue fabric looked garish and alien against the uniform grey of the Hive City's architecture. Through the white lenses of his mask he surveyed a world of shadows and smoke. Gothic grandeur and industrial decay stretched beyond comprehension. Servitors shambled past on a gantry below, their augment limbs whirring as they hauled cargo. Their faces were masks of metal and dead flesh, eyes vacant, bodies mutilated and rebuilt for mindless labour. Peter's stomach lurched at the sight, but before he could process the horror, his spider sense flared with warning intensity. Lass fire erupted from an adjacent causeway, crimson beams slicing through the polluted air. The distinctive crack of solid projectile weapons followed, accompanied by human screams. Peter's body moved before his mind could catch up, muscle memory propelling him toward the conflict with practiced ease. Web fluid, mercifully intact, shot from his wrist devices as he swung between the towering spires. The battle unfolded on a broad thoroughfare connecting 2 hive sections. Men and women in tattered clothing fought with desperate ferocity against uniformed enforcers. Crude weapons clashed against shock mauls and autoguns. The civilians, marked by strange symbols carved into their skin, fought with the fervour of true believers. The enforcers responded with mechanical precision and brutal efficiency. Multiple hostiles engaged, heretical symbology confirmed, casualties acceptable, voxed an enforcer captain, his voice distorted through a brass-grilled helmet. "Purge the unclean." Peter landed in the midst of the conflict, his arrival momentarily stunning both sides into silence. The enforcers raised their weapons, target-finding systems locking onto this new unexplained threat. The civilians looked upon him with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "Hey guys, is this the welcoming committee? Because I got to say, the hospitality here leaves something to be desired," Peter quipped, though his voice betrayed uncertainty beneath the bravado. The enforcer captain recovered first. Unknown entity detected, potentially warp-tainted, authorization requested for immediate termination. Wait, what? Termination? Peter dodged as last fire erupted toward him, the beams passing through empty air where he had stood a heartbeat before. His spider sense guided him through the storm of energy, each movement precisely calculated to avoid the lethal barrage. A civilian woman, her face marked with a spiral pattern of ritual scars, reached for him with bloodied hands. "The Oracle foretold your coming, the saviour from beyond." "Lady, I'm just trying to figure out where I am," Peter replied, pulling her behind a fallen slab of ferrocrete as more lassfire peppered their position. "Hive Turcus, Blessed One, Segmentum Obscurus, you are the answer to our prayers, the one who will lead us to freedom from the Corpse Emperor's tyranny." Peter's enhanced hearing caught the distinctive click of grenades being armed. With inhuman speed, he fired webs at the explosive devices, yanking them from the enforcer's hands and flinging them high into the polluted air where they detonated harmlessly. "I don't know what's going on here, but I'm not leading any revolutions," he said, webbing 2 enforcers together and dodging another volley of fire, "and I'm definitely not killing anyone, so maybe we can all just calm down and talk this through." His words fell on deaf ears. The cultists surged forward, emboldened by his intervention, while the enforcers called for reinforcements through crackling Vox units. Peter found himself caught between 2 forces, neither of which he understood, both willing to kill for their beliefs. "This really isn't my day," he muttered, leaping 20th straight up to avoid the conflict, adhering to the underside of a massive pipe that ran the length of the thoroughfare. From this vantage point he watched the battle unfold with growing horror. The enforcers executed wounded cultists with clinical detachment. The cultists responded with frenzied attacks, heedless of their own safety. The whine of approaching engines cut through the sounds of battle. A sleek black craft descended through the hive layers, emblazoned with a stylized silver eye. Its hull bore the scars of countless conflicts, yet it moved with predatory grace. Weapon systems tracked the combatants below, ready to unleash destruction. "Attention!" boomed a voice from the craft's external voxcasters. "This area is now under the jurisdiction of the Imperial Inquisition. Surrender or be purged." The enforcers immediately lowered their weapons and knelt, heads bowed in deference. The cultists scattered, disappearing into the labyrinthine depths of the underhive. Peter remained frozen in place, unsure whether to flee or reveal himself. The decision was made for him when the craft sensors swiveled in his direction. Advanced op systems penetrating his concealment. A targeting matrix locked onto his position, and a lance of energy scored the pipe inches from his body. He felt the heat through his costume, smelled the acrid tang of scorched metal. "Unidentified entity. Reveal yourself or face immediate termination," the voice commanded. Peter dropped from his perch, landing in a crouch before the hovering craft. Its forward ramp descended, disgorging a small contingent of figures in carapace armor, their weapons trained on him with unwavering precision. At their center walked a woman clad in a form-fitting body glove beneath segments of masterfully crafted power armor. Her face was aristocratic, severe, with augmentic implants gleaming at her temple and left eye. She carried herself with absolute authority, her very presence commanding deference. "I am Inquisitor Dana of the Ordo Hereticus," she announced, her voice crisp and cultured. "Remove your mask, creature, and explain your nature." Peter hesitated, then slowly reached up and pulled away his mask, revealing a youthful face-stree with blood and grime. His brown eyes, filled with confusion and weariness, met the Inquisitor's augmented gaze. "My name is Peter Parker," he said simply, "and I think I'm a long way from home." Inquisitor Dana studied him with clinical detachment, her augment eye whirring as it adjusted focus. "Indeed, you are," she replied after a moment. "Further than you can possibly imagine. The interrogation chamber aboard the Inquisitor's ship, the Veiled Retribution, was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. Its proportions were subtly wrong, designed to induce discomfort. The lighting shifted imperceptibly, disorienting the subject. The temperature fluctuated, preventing adaptation. Peter sat in a chair of cold metal, his wrists bound by restraints that even his enhanced strength could not break. His costume had been taken for analysis, leaving him in a simple grey body glove provided by his captors. Medical servitors had treated his wounds with brutal efficiency, caring nothing for his comfort. Inquisitor Dana circled him slowly, her footsteps echoing on the metal floor. "Your biological readings are fascinating, Peter Parker. Human yet not entirely, enhanced reflexes, accelerated healing, increased strength and agility, and something else. Something my sense cannot quite quantify." "Spider sense," Peter offered wearily. "It warns me of danger, a form of precognition, then limited, but useful." She stopped before him, her augment eye glowing faintly in the dimness. "You claim to be from another reality entirely, a parallel universe where humanity never left its cradle world, where the Emperor never rose to guide mankind, where the horrors of the warp remain unknown." "That's one way of putting it," Peter agreed. "Though where I'm from, we have our own problems, supervillains, alien invasions, cosmic entities with a taste for planets, yet nothing compared to what threatens humanity here." Dana tapped a control on her wrist, and a holothic projection materialized between them. It showed scenes of unimaginable horror. Worlds burning under the onslaught of Kitanus Xenos hordes. Realities twisted by the malign influence of chaos. The relentless advance of soulless mechanical warriors. This is the reality you now inhabit. Peter Parker, the 41st millennium. Mankind stands on the precipice of extinction, beset on all sides by enemies beyond your comprehension. The God Emperor sacrifices thousands daily so that billions might live another day. There is no place for mercy, no room for weakness, only duty and sacrifice. Peter stared at the images, his face pale but resolute, With great power comes great responsibility, he said quietly. That's what my uncle taught me before he died. I couldn't save him, but I can save others. That's what I do. That's who I am. Dana's expression remained unreadable. Noble sentiments, but here they may get you killed or worse. She dismissed the holothic display with a gesture. I have reviewed the footage of your intervention in the Underhive. Your combat capabilities are impressive. Your moral compass, while naive, speaks to a fundamental decency that is rare in these times. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. The cult you encountered worships entities beyond your understanding. Gods of madness and corruption that seek to unmake reality itself. Their promises of freedom are lies that lead only to damnation. Remember that. So what happens now? Peter asked, meeting her gaze steadily. Now? Dana's lips curved in a cold smile. Now you become an asset of the Inquisition. Your abilities are too valuable to waste, and your presence has already been noted by forces that would use you for their own ends. Better you serve the Imperium willingly than fall into the hands of its enemies. And if I refuse, then you die, and your enhanced body is rendered down for study by the biologus adepts of the Mechanicus. Your choice. Peter closed his eyes briefly, weighing his options. When he opened them again, determination had replaced uncertainty. I'll help you, but I won't kill unless absolutely necessary, and I won't stand by while innocents suffer, not even in the name of your Emperor. Dana studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. Your terms are noted, if not entirely accepted. We shall see how long your idealism survives the realities of this millennium. She gestured, and the restraints on his wrist released. Your equipment has been examined and will be returned to you along with supplies to maintain it. You will be assigned quarters aboard this vessel and briefed on your duties. As Peter rubbed his wrists, Dana turned to leave. At the threshold she paused. One final warning, Peter Parker. The Imperium does not suffer mutants or Xenos-tainted beings. Your abilities mark you as potentially both. It is only my authority as Inquisitor that prevents your immediate execution. Remember that before you consider defiance, the door sealed behind her with the finality of a tomb. Days blurred into weeks as Peter adapted to his new reality. The veiled retribution travelled between worlds of the Imperium, investigating potential threats and eliminating heresy wherever it was found. As part of Inquisitor Dana's retinue, Peter witnessed both the majesty and the horror of the Imperium of Man. He saw hive cities larger than continents where billions lived and died without ever seeing the sky. He walked the gleaming halls of orbital stations where the aristocracy of the Imperium plotted and schemed. He stood in the shadow of titans, war machines tall as mountains, their weapons capable of levelling cities. And he saw the darkness that underpinned it all, the casual cruelty, the religious fanaticism that justified atrocity, the sacrifices deemed necessary for humanity's survival. Through it all, he clung to his principles, even as they were tested again and again. He used his abilities to capture rather than kill when possible. He showed mercy where others demanded execution. He spoke for the common people when the Inquisition would have burned whole districts to eliminate a single heretic. Some in Dana's retinue came to respect him for this. Marcos Delphia, a tech priest whose body was more machine than flesh, found Peter's web shooters fascinating and helped him synthesize more fluid using local materials. Interrogator Voss, Dana's apprentice, initially suspicious of the outsider, gradually came to appreciate Peter's insights and tactical acumen. Others remained hostile. Sister Amalia of the Adeptus Auritus watched him with burning hatred, convinced he was a mutant who should be purged. Commissar Drafk, attached to the retinue as a liaison with the Imperial Guard, viewed Peter's reluctance to kill as dangerous weakness. Inquisitor Dana herself remained inscrutable, observing Peter's actions without comment, testing his limits in subtle ways. She assigned him tasks that challenged his morals without breaking them. She exposed him to the horrors of chaos without allowing him to fall prey to its corrupting influence. She watched, and she waited. Their relationship changed during a mission to the frontier world of Helios Primus. Intelligence suggested a growing cult presence in the capital hive, potentially linked to Genestealer infiltration. The Inquisition moved with characteristic ruthlessness, but even they were unprepared for what awaited them. The cult had spread further than anyone realized, infecting all levels of planetary governance. When Dana's team moved to apprehend the planetary governor, they walked into an ambush. Hybridized cultists, their bodies twisted by Xeno's DNA, attacked from all sides. Last fire and solid rounds filled the air, cutting down inquisitorial stormtroopers. Peter moved with superhuman speed, webbing attackers to walls and ceilings, pulling wounded allies to safety. His spider sense allowed him to navigate the chaotic battlefield with precision, avoiding danger while striking with maximum effect. But even he had limits. A hulking hybrid, muscles bulging beneath pallid skin, crashed through a barricade and seized Sister Amalthea. Her bolt fire tore chunks from its torso, but still it came on, clawed hands ripping at her power armor. Peter launched himself at the creature, slamming into it with all his enhanced strength. They tumbled away from the sister, crashing through a stained glass window depicting the Emperor's ascension. They fell 30 men to a courtyard below, the hybrid's body cushioning Peter's impact. He rolled away, coming up in a fighting stance as the creature rose, ichor leaking from its wounds, its lipless mouth split in a hideous grin, revealing needle-sharp teeth. "The Starfather welcomes you, off-worlder," it hissed, its voice a distorted parody of humanity. "Your genetic potential is magnificent. You will make an excellent host for the next generation." "Thanks, but I'm not really the paternal type," Peter replied, firing webs at the creature's eyes. It tore them away with a roar of anger, charging forward with unnatural speed. Peter met its charge, ducking under sweeping claws and delivering a series of rapid strikes to vulnerable points. Each blow would have failed a normal human, but the hybrid merely staggered before renewing its assault. Claws ran across Peter's chest, tearing through his costume and drawing blood. Pain flared, but Peter pushed through it, leaping over the creature and webbing its legs together. It toppled forward, crashing into a statue of the Imperial Aquila. Before it could recover, Peter was on its back. Web shooters pressed against the base of its skull. "Stay down," he warned. "I don't want to kill you." The hybrid laughed, a sound like stones grinding together. "Kill this body if you wish. The cycle continues, the brood spreads. Soon this world will be consumed, and we shall ascend to the stars on ships of flesh and steel." "I've heard enough," came Inquisitor Dana's voice from above. She stood at the shattered window, bolt pistol raised. A single shot rang out, and the hybrid's head exploded in a spray of bone and corrupted flesh. Peter flinched away, wiping from his mask. "I had him contained," he said, a note of accusation in his voice. "And now he is dead, as all Xenos must be." Dana descended on a grab chute, landing lightly beside him. "Your mercy is misplaced, Peter Parker. These creatures are not human no matter what form they wear. They exist only to consume and corrupt. That doesn't mean we have to become monsters to fight them," Peter argued, wincing as the pain of his wounds caught up with him. Dana's expression softened fractionally. "Number, perhaps it does not," she gestured to his injuries. "You saved Sister Amalia at great risk to yourself, a woman who has shown you nothing but contempt." "Why?" Peter shrugged. "It was the right thing to do." "The right thing?" Dana repeated, as if testing the concept. "A luxury few can afford in these times." She activated her command. "Magos Delin, prepare the medic bay. Parker requires treatment." As they made their way back to the extraction point, Dana spoke again, her voice uncharacteristically reflective. "You have survived 3 months in a reality that would break most men in days. You have faced horrors beyond comprehension without losing your fundamental decency. It island remarkable." "Just doing what I can with what I've got," Peter replied, supporting himself against a wall as fatigue washed over him. Indeed, Dana studied him with her augment eye. "Perhaps there is something to learn from your example. The Imperium sacrifices much in the name of survival, perhaps too much at times." It was the closest thing to approval Peter had received from her, and he treasured it even as darkness claimed him. The Medicaid deck of the Veiled Retribution hummed with the quiet efficiency of Imperial technology. Servo skulls drifted between treatment bays, monitoring vital signs and administering medications through mechandrites that extended from their jawbones. Medici servitors, once human but now more machine than man, performed procedures with mechanical precision. Peter lay on a surgical slab, semic-conscious as Margot Delphin examined the wounds inflicted by the genus hybrid. The tech priest's augment limbs moved with delicate precision, removing fragments of corrupted tissue and applying medicaments to prevent infection. "Fascinating," Delphin murmured, his voice distorted by the Vox grill that had replaced his lower jaw. Your healing factor is accelerating in response to the trauma. Cellular regeneration operating at 342% of baseline human efficiency. The Omnissire's work is evident in your construction, Parker. Not constructed, Peter. Managed through gritted teeth. Born this way. Well, except for the spider powers. Those came later. Radioactive spider bite. Long story. Radiation-induced mutagenesis resulting in beneficial adaptations. Improbable, yet the evidence is before me. Delphin inserted a syringe into Peter's arm, drawing blood for analysis. With your permission, I would like to sequence your genome purely for academic purposes. You understand? Sure, why not? Peter winced as a medic servitor applied a burning unguent to his chest wounds. Not like things can get much weirder. Mio's Delin came, Inquisitor Dana's voice from the entrance to the medic bay. I require a moment with our guest. The tech priest straightened me, curling back into his robes. As you wish, Inquisitor. The specimen is stable. His enhanced physiology has neutralized any potential genestalar contamination. Truly remarkable. Thank you, Margos. You may continue your examinations later. Dana waited until the tech priest had shuffled away before approaching Peter's surgical slab. She looked down at him, her expression unreadable. How do you feel? Like I went 10 rounds with a very angry calamari, Peter replied, attempting a smile that turned into a grimace. But I'll live. Always do indeed. Dana activated a privacy field with a gesture, surrounding them in a bubble of silence impenetrable to outside monitoring. What I am about to tell you does not leave this field understood. Peter nodded, suddenly alert despite his pain. The situation on Helios Primus is worse than we initially believed. The genus cult has infiltrated not only the planetary government, but elements of the Adeptus Arbits and the PDF. The entire planet may be compromised beyond salvaging. So what happens now? Dana's jaw tightened. Protocol dictates exterminate is the complete destruction of all life on the planet to prevent the spread of the infestation. Peter tried to sit up, ignoring the flare of pain from his wounds. You can't be serious. There are billions of people down there. Innocent people who have nothing to do with this cult. Billions who may already be infected or who will be within weeks. The genus dealer life cycle is insidious, Peter. It spreads through genetic corruption, turning humans into willing hosts for the next generation of hybrids. Given enough time, a single genus dealer can infect an entire world. There has to be another way, Peter insisted. What about evacuation? Get the uninfected people off-world, then deal with the cult and risk spreading the infection to other systems. The Imperium cannot take that chance. Better to sacrifice one world than risk a dozen more. Peter's hands clenched into fists. I can't accept that. There has to be a way to identify who's infected and who isn't. Some kind of test. Dana was silent for a moment, her augment eye worrying as it adjusted focus. There are methods. Psychic scanning can detect the psychic imprint of the gene-stealer patriarch. Blood tests can identify certain markers of infection, though they are not foolproof. But to implement such measures on a planetary scale would require resources we do not have and time we cannot spare. What if we cut off the head? Peter suggested. Find this patriarch and eliminate it. Would that stop the infection from spreading temporarily, perhaps? But the damage is already done. The infected would continue to breed, creating new generations of hybrids. Eventually, a new patriarch would emerge, but it would buy time. Time to implement those tests to save as many people as possible. Dana studied him, her expression calculating. You truly believe this is possible? I have to believe it, Peter said firmly. Otherwise, what am I fighting for? After a long moment, Dana nodded. Very well. I will delay the exterminatus request for 48 hours. In that time, we will attempt to locate and eliminate the genestalar patriarch. If we succeed, I will consider alternative measures for dealing with the infected population. Relief washed over Peter. Thank you. Do not thank me yet, Peter Parker. I am risking much on your conviction. If we fail, the death toll may be even higher. She deactivated the privacy field with a gesture. Rest, heal. We begin our hunt in 6 hours. As she turned to leave, Peter called after her. Why are you doing this, taking this risk? Dana paused at the threshold. Because in 3 months, you have shown more humanity than I have seen in 3 centuries of service to the Imperium, and perhaps that is something worth preserving. The door slid shut behind her, leaving Peter alone with his thoughts and the quiet hum of medic equipment. The underhive of Helios Primus was a labyrinth of decaying infrastructure and forgotten spaces. Centuries of expansion had built the hive city upward, leaving the lower levels to rot and fester. It was here, in the darkness and filth, that the Genestealer cult had established its most sacred site, the breeding chambers where the patriarch dwelled. Peter moved through the shadows with preternatural grace, his enhanced senses alert to every sound and movement. His wounds had healed remarkably quickly, leaving only faint scars beneath his repaired costume. Behind him came Inquisitor Dana, her power armor dampened to reduce noise, and a small team of her most trusted operatives. Auspec's readings indicate a large cavern ahead, whispered Mayos Delphin, his augment eye glowing faintly in the gloom. Biological signatures are off the scale. We have found their nest. Peter crouched at the edge of a broken wall, peering into the darkness beyond. His enhanced vision made out shapes moving in the shadows, humanoid, but wrong in subtle ways. The hybrids patrolled the approaches to the cavern, their movements betraying their inhuman nature. "I count 12 guards," he reported quietly. "Probably more, I can't see." Dana nodded, her face grim behind her rebreather mask. "We must move quickly. The Patriarch will sense our presence soon if it hasn't already." "Let me clear a path," Peter suggested. "I can take out the guards silently, one by one." "Very well. But be aware, these creatures are connected psychically. If one raises the alarm, all will know." Peter nodded, then slipped over the wall and into the darkness. He moved from shadow to shadow, a ghost in red and blue. The first hybrid fell without a sound, cocooned in webbing before it could react. The second and third followed quickly, taken from behind and secured to the ceiling, but the fourth sensed him coming. Its head snapped around, eyes widening as it caught sight of the colourful intruder. Before it could cry out, Peter fired a web directly into its mouth, muffling its alarm. He leapt forward, delivering a precise strike to a nerve cluster that sent the hybrid into unconsciousness. The damage was done, however. The other hybrid stiffened, alerted by the psychic distress of their fallen comrade. They turned as one, moving toward Peter's position with preternatural coordination. "So much for the stealth approach," Peter muttered, springing into action. He bounded between the hybrids, a blur of motion too fast for them to track. Webs ensnared limbs and bound bodies to the decaying infrastructure. Enhanced strength allowed him to throw hybrids into each other, creating a chaotic melee that disrupted their coordinated assault. Inquisitor Dana and her team seized the opportunity, emerging from cover with weapons blazing. Last fire and bolter rounds cut down hybrids that had escaped Peter's webs. Sister Amalia's flamer bathed a group of attackers in Prometheum, turning them into screaming pillars of fire. "The entrance is clear," Dana voxed. "Move forward. The Patriarch awaits." They advanced into the cavern, a vast space carved from the foundations of the hive. The walls glistened with organic secretions forming patterns that hurt the eye to follow. Pods lined the perimeter, each containing a gestating hybrid in various stages of development. The air was thick with the sweet rot stench of Xenos biology, and at the centre, enthroned upon a disk of fused bone and metal, waited the Patriarch. It was massive, easily 4 times the size of a human, with a carapace of purple, black chitin, and multiple limbs that ended in vicious claws. Its head was a nightmarish blend of human and alien features with too many eyes and a maw full of needle teeth. It pulsed with psychic energy, a malevolent presence that pressed against the minds of the intruders. "Emperor, preserve us," whispered Interrogator Voss, his hand tightening on his bolt pistol. The Patriarch rose from its throne, moving with a fluid grace that belied its size. Its voice, when it spoke, resonated directly in their minds, bypassing ears altogether. "Welcome, little prey. You have come far to die." Peter felt the creature's psychic probe attempting to infiltrate his thoughts. His spider sense flared, interpreting the intrusion as danger and helping him resist. Beside him, he saw Dana's face contort in pain as she fought her own battle against the Patriarch's influence. "We need to hit it with everything we've got," Peter said, tensing for action. "Don't give it time to use its psychic powers." Dana nodded grimly. "All units, open fire, maximum dispersal. Aim for the eyes and joints in the carapace." A storm of firepower erupted from the inquisitorial team. Bolter-R rounds exploded against the Patriarch's carapace. Last beams scorched its flesh, and melter charges burned white-hot craters in its body. The creature roared in pain and fury, its psychic scream sending several team members to their knees, blood trickling from their noses and ears. Peter launched himself directly at the Patriarch, weaving through its slashing claws with spider-like agility. He delivered a series of powerful blows to vulnerable points, each impact amplified by his enhanced strength. The creature staggered but did not fall, its regenerative abilities already sealing the wounds as quickly as they were inflicted. A massive claw caught Peter mid-leap, sending him crashing into a wall with bone-jarring force. He felt ribs crack, pain lancing through his torso. Before he could recover, the Patriarch was upon him, pinning him to the ground with one enormous limb. Your genetic pattern is unknown to the hive mind. It communicated, its face inches from Peter's. But your potential is clear. You will be the first of a new strain, stronger, faster, better. Sorry, Peter gasped, fighting against the crushing pressure on his chest. But I'm really not interested in joining your family tree. With a supreme effort, he forced his arms up and fired his web shooters directly into the Patriarch's multiple eyes. The creature reared back, clawing at the adhesive substance that blinded it. Peter rolled away, every movement sending spikes of pain through his damaged ribs. Inquisitor Donna seized the opportunity, charging forward with her power sword, crackling with disruptive energy. She leapt onto the Patriarch's back, driving the blade deep into a joint where carapace met flesh. Ichor sprayed as the weapon severed crucial nerve bundles, causing the creature's right side to spasm uncontrollably. The Patriarch bucked and thrashed, trying to dislodge the Inquisitor. Its psychic assault intensified, flooding the minds of the attackers with images of cosmic horror and promises of power. Several stormtroopers turned their weapons on their companions, eyes glazed and movements puppet-like. "Hold fast," Dana commanded, her voice strained but resolute. "The Emperor protects." Peter saw Mios Delphin fall, his mechanical limbs twitching as the Patriarch's influence corrupted his cybernetic systems. Sister Amalia fought on, her faith providing some protection against the psychic assault, but even she was faltering, her movements growing sluggish. "We need to end this now," Peter realized. His gaze swept the cavern, noting the structural supports, the pods of developing hybrids, the organic matter coating every surface. An idea formed, desperate but potentially effective. "Inquisitor," he called, forcing himself to his feet despite the pain. "The flamer, the methane pockets. We can turn this entire chamber into an inferno." Dana, still clinging to the Patriarch's back as it thrashed, understood immediately. "Sister Amalia, target the gas pockets with your flamer. Full discharge." The Sister of Battle nodded grimly, redirecting her weapon toward the ceiling, where methane, produced by the organic processes of the cult, had collected invisible bubbles within the secretions. One burst of prometheum would ignite the entire pocket, creating a chain reaction throughout the chamber. "Wait," Peter said, web swinging to Amalia's side. "Once you fire, we'll have seconds to get out. Let me get the wounded clear first." "There is no time," Dana shouted as the Patriarch finally dislodged her, sending her crashing to the floor. Her power armor absorbed much of the impact, but she struggled to rise as the creature loomed over her. "Do it now, sister." Peter made his decision in an instant. He fired web lines at Delphin and the fallen stormtroopers, yanking them toward the entrance with all his strength. To Amalfa he shouted, "Give me 3 seconds, then light it up." Not waiting for a response, he launched himself at the Patriarch, which was raising a massive claw to deliver a killing blow to Dana. He slammed into the creature with all his remaining strength, knocking it off balance. In the same motion, he scooped up the Inquisitor, her power armor making her far heavier than she appeared. "Hold on," he grunted, firing a web line at the cavern entrance with his free hand. The line went to and they swung towards safety as Sister Amalfa triggered her flamer. The first methane pocket ignited with a whoosh blue flame, spreading across the ceiling with terrifying speed. Secondary pockets caught, creating a cascading inferno that raced through the chamber. The Patriarch screamed, a psychic howl of rage and pain that threatened to burst the skulls of all who heard it. Peter and Dana reached the entrance as the main body of the cavern collapsed behind them, tons of rock and metal crushing everything within. The shockwave propelled them forward, sending them tumbling into the tunnel beyond where Amalia and the surviving team members waited. For long moments, they lay in the darkness, the rumble of secondary collapses echoing through the underhive. Emergency lumens activated, casting harsh light over the survivors. Peter's costume was torn and scorched, blood seeping through from wounds reopened by his exertions. Dana's power armor bore deep gouges from the Patriarch's claws, and one of her augment implants sparked fitfully. "Status report," she demanded, her voice arse but commanding. "3 confirmed casualties," reported Interrogator Voss, his face streaked with soot and blood. "Margot's Delphin is severely damaged but functional. Sister Amalia sustained burns but remains combat-ready." "And the Patriarch buried under 1/2 kilometre of rockcrete and steel," Peter said, wincing as he probed his broken ribs. "I don't think even that thing could survive being crushed and burned simultaneously." Dana activated her combi, establishing a link with the veiled retribution in orbit. "Target eliminated. Repeat. Primary target eliminated. Prepare for extraction and implement Phase 2 protocols." She turned to Peter, her expression softening fractionally. "You disobeyed a direct order, Parker. I told Sister Amalia to fire immediately." "I couldn't leave your people behind," Peter replied simply. "That's not how I operate. Your moral code nearly got us all killed." "But it didn't, and we saved 3 lives that would have been lost otherwise." Dana regarded him silently for a moment, then nodded. "Perhaps. Come, we have much to do. The Patriarch may be dead, but its brood remains. We must implement the containment measures you suggested before the Inquisitorial Conclave loses patience." As they made their way back through the twisting tunnels of the Underhive, Peter felt a flicker of hope. For the first time since his arrival in this grim future, he had made a tangible difference. Billions of lives that would have been extinguished without hesitation would now have a chance at survival. It was a small victory in a universe drowning in darkness, but it was a start. The following week saw the implementation of the most extensive screening operation in the history of Helios Primus. Under Inquisitor Dana's authority, sanctioned psychers were brought in to detect the psychic echo of Genistala infection. Medicaid facilities worked around the clock processing blood samples and genetic markers. The Adeptus Mechanicus provided servitors programmed to identify the subtle physical signs of hybridization. Peter was at the forefront of the effort, his enhanced abilities allowing him to cover ground that would require dozens of normal operatives. He swung through the hive spires, descended into the deepest underhive, and patrolled the vast industrial zones, identifying cult hideouts and bringing in suspects for screening. Not all could be saved. Those in the later stages of infection, their humanity already subsumed by Xeno's DNA, were executed without hesitation. Those showing the earlier signs were quarantined, their fate to be determined after further study, but millions who would have died under the standard exterminatus protocol were cleared and allowed to continue their lives, ignorant of how close they had come to annihilation. The political fallout was severe. The planetary governor, found to be in the early stages of infection, was publicly executed as a warning to others. The PDF was purged of infected elements and placed under the direct command of the Imperial Guard. The Adeptus Arbits established martial law, enforcing curfews and movement restrictions throughout the hive cities. Through it all, stories spread of a red and blue figure that moved with impossible speed and agility, rescuing civilians from cult attacks and delivering cultists to Imperial justice. Some called him a miracle sent by the Emperor. Others whispered that he was a Xenos himself, or perhaps a sanctioned mutant in the Inquisition service. Few glimpsed him clearly enough to provide a consistent description, adding to his mystique. Peter found the attention uncomfortable but useful. The Spider-Man of Helios, as he became known, served as a symbol of hope in desperate times, a reminder that even in the grim darkness of the far future, heroes could still exist. Inquisitor Dana watched these developments with calculating eyes. She had taken an immense risk in delaying Exterminatus, defying centuries of established protocol. The success of the operation had vindicated her decision, but it had also drawn unwanted attention from her peers in the Inquisition. Questions were being asked about her methods, her judgment, and her mysterious operative with abilities that defied easy categorization. "The Inquisitorial Conclave has requested your presence," she informed Peter one evening aboard the Veiled Retribution. They stood in her private chambers, surrounded by artifacts collected from 100 worlds and 1,000 years of service to the Imperium. "They wish to assess you personally." Peter looked up from the maintenance of his web shooters, his expression wary. "That doesn't sound good. It is neither good nor bad. It's simply island." Dana poured 2 glasses of Amasec, a rare luxury imported from a distant forge world. She handed one to Peter before taking a seat behind her ornate desk. "You have proven your value beyond question. The operation on Helios Primus would have failed without your intervention. Billions would have died. But you remain an anomaly. Your abilities defy conventional classification. Your origin in another reality raises theological questions that make the more conservative elements of the Inquisition uncomfortable." She sipped her ames, the augment implants at her temple gleaming in the low light. "Some argue that you are warp-touched, a manifestation of powers beyond Imperial control. And what do you think?" Dana set down her glass, fixing Peter with her mismatched gaze. "I think you are exactly what you claim to be. A man from another reality with abilities granted by chance and scientific accident. More importantly, I think you are an asset the Imperium cannot afford to waste in these desperate times. But the Conclave might not agree. They might not. The Inquisition is not monolithic, Peter. We're united in purpose, but divided in methodology. The Puritan factions will argue for your termination on principle alone. The more radical elements may wish to study you, perhaps even replicate your abilities through means you would find abhorrent." Peter's fingers tightened around his glass. "I won't let myself be used as a weapon or a lab rat. I know." Dana's lips curved in a cold smile, "which is why I have taken steps to ensure your continued freedom and service under my direct authority." "What kind of steps?" "The kind that would be best for you not to know about." She rose, moving to a star map projected on one wall of her chambers. "We depart for the fortress world of Nemesis Tessera in 3 days. There you will stand before the Conclave and be judged. Prepare yourself accordingly." Peter nodded, understanding the unspoken warning. The relative safety he had enjoyed under Dana's protection was coming to an end. Soon he would face the full scrutiny of the Imperium's most feared organization, and his fate would hang in the balance. As he turned to leave, Dana spoke again, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. "Peter, regardless of what happens, know that you have done more good in your short time here than many who served the Emperor for centuries. Your uncle would be proud." The reference to Uncle Ben, a detail Peter had shared only once in passing, caught him off guard. He looked back at the Inquisitor, seeing for the first time not the ruthless agent of Imperial will, but a woman who had spent centuries fighting an impossible war against enemies beyond comprehension, who had witnessed atrocities that would break most minds, and who still somehow retained enough humanity to recognize it in others. "Thank you," he said simply, and left to prepare for what might be his final mission. Nemesis Tessera loomed against the void, a fortress world dedicated entirely to the operations of the Inquisition. Its surface was a maze of defensive installations, training facilities, and imposing citadels where the business of rooting out heresy was conducted with cold efficiency. Void shields shimmered around key installations, while defense lasers tracked the approach of every vessel, ready to obliterate any that deviated from authorized flight paths. The veiled retribution descended through carefully controlled approach vectors, eventually docking at a massive orbital plate suspended above the primary inquisitorial fortress. Peter stood at a viewport, watching as armoured shuttles and sleek interceptors moved between the orbital facilities with military precision. "Impressive, is it not?" said Magos Delphine, joining him at the viewport. The tech priest's damaged systems had been repaired, though his movement still occasionally glitched, a reminder of the Patriarch's psychic assault. The entire planet exists for a single purpose, the preservation of humanity through vigilance and force. "It's a bit much," Peter replied. "Where I come from, we manage to protect people without turning whole planets into fortresses. Your reality sounds most inefficient." Delphin's mechondrites writhed in what Peter had come to recognize as amusement. The Omnissiah's will is expressed through optimal allocation of resources. Here, every structure, every individual serves their designated function. There is beauty in such purpose. I suppose that depends on what the purpose island. Peter turned from the viewport as the ship's engines powered down, indicating they had completed docking procedures. Time to face the music. An odd idiom. There will be no music at the Conclave, I assure you. Delphin placed a mechanical hand on Peter's shoulder, the gesture awkward, but well-intentioned. "May the Omnitia guide your path, Peter Parker. You have shown this old machine that adaptability is sometimes preferable to rigid adherence to protocol. That might be the nicest thing a cyborg priest has ever said to me." Peter smiled, genuinely touched by the tech priest's words. "Thank you, Delphine." They made their way to the ship's main airlock where Inquisitor Dana waited with the rest of her retinue. All were dressed in their finest regalia, presenting the full majesty and authority of the Inquisition. Dana herself wore formal power armour of ancient design, inscribed with prayers and wards against corruption. A cloak of midnight blue hung from her shoulders, clasped with the silver inquisitorial one. "Remember the briefing," she told Peter as final preparations were made. "Speak only when spoken to. Answer truthfully but concisely. Do not attempt humour or levity. The conclave values clarity and directness above all. Got it? Be boring. Be brief. Be gone." Dana's lips twitched in what might have been a suppressed smile. "Precisely. And remember, whatever happens in that chamber, you're under my protection until a final judgment is rendered. No one may harm or detain you without my consent." The airlock cycled open, revealing a delegation of inquisitorial guards in ornate carapace armour. They formed up around Dana's retinue, more an honour guard than a security detail, though Peter noted that their weapons remained ready for use. They proceeded through the orbital plate to a teleportarium, a massive chamber dominated by arcane machinery, and attended by tech priests who chanted binary prayers as they prepared the devices for activation. Peter had experienced teleportation once before, during a mission to an orbital defense platform, and had found the process deeply unpleasant. "This will be more intense than your previous experience," Dana warned, noting his expression. "The fortress is protected by void shields and warp-dampening fields. The transition will be jarring. Great. Looking forward to it." They stepped onto the teleportation platform arranged in a precise formation dictated by the tech priests. Runes glowed on the floor beneath their feet, power building as the machine cycled up to full capacity. Peter felt his spider sense tingle, responding to the imminent displacement of his physical form. Reality tore for an instant that stretched to subjective eternity. Peter existed everywhere and nowhere. His consciousness stretched across dimensions never meant for human perception. He glimpsed things in that non-space. Vast entities moving between the stars, cities that pulsed like living hearts, a golden throne where a withered figure endured endless pain for the sake of humanity. Then they were through, materializing in a similar chamber deep within the fortress. Peter staggered, his enhanced physiology struggling to process the trauma of transition. Around him, even hardened inquisitorial agents looked shaken. Only Dana seemed unmoved, her expression betraying nothing of what she might have witnessed in the between space. "The conclave awaits," announced a servitor, its voice flat and emotionless. "Follow." They proceeded through corridors of age-darkened stone and burnished metal, past shrines to fallen inquisitors and display cases containing the remains of vanquished foes. Servitors and adepts moved with purpose, carrying data slates and ancient tomes. Armed guards stood at key intersections, their weapons and armour marking them as elite Tempest scions seconded to inquisitorial service. Finally, they reached a massive doorway inscribed with warnings and oaths in High Gothic. It swung open silently as they approached, revealing the conclave chamber beyond. The space was vast, circular, and dominated by a central disk surrounded by tiered seating. Inquisitors from various ordos sat in solemn judgment, their faces shadowed by the chamber's peculiar lighting. Some wore power armour similar to Dan, while others preferred the robes of scholars or the practical gear of field agents. All bore the inquisitorial rosette, symbol of their absolute authority. Servo skulls drifted through the air, recording the proceedings for the Inquisition's archives. Hooded adepts stood ready to retrieve reference materials or attend to the Inquisitor's needs. Armed guards lined the walls, their weapons trained on the central dais where Peter now stood alone. Dana having joined her peers in the lower tier of seats. Peter Parker intoned a voice from the highest tier. It belonged to an ancient man whose withered body was supported by a sophisticated life support throne. His eyes, however, remained sharp and calculating. "You stand before the Conclave Obscurus to be judged. I am Lord Inquisitor Hextavon, and I shall preside over these proceedings." Peter resisted the urge to make a quip about the theatricality of it all. "I understand, Lord Inquisitor." "Do you?" Van leaned forward slightly, the movement causing his throne to whir in adjustment. "I wonder. You are an anomaly, Peter Parker, a being from another reality with abilities that defy easy categorization. Neither mutant nor Xenos, yet possessing qualities of both. In normal circumstances, your mere existence would be sufficient cause for termination." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled Inquisitors. However, Vaughn continued, "These are not normal circumstances." Inquisitor Dana has submitted a most detailed report of your service to the Imperium, particularly your role in the Helios Primus operation. The preservation of a valuable Imperial world without resorting to Exterminatus Island, noteworthy. I just did what anyone would do, Peter responded. Found a better way. A woman in the crimson robes of the Ordo Malus laughed, the sound devoid of humour. There speaks one who has not faced the true horrors that beset humanity. Sometimes there is no better way, outsider. Sometimes fire is the only purity. With respect, Peter countered, ignoring Dana's warning. Look, I've seen plenty of horrors since I arrived here. I've fought things that shouldn't exist outside of nightmares, and I still believe there's always a better way than wholesale slaughter. Your belief is irrelevant, snapped an Inquisitor, whose face was largely replaced by augmentics. Only results matter, and while the results on Helios Primus were acceptable, they do not establish a precedent. The protocols exist for a reason. Lord Inquisitor Vaughn raised a hand, silencing the debate. We are not here to relitigate the Helios Primus operation. The question before us is what to do with Peter Parker. His abilities are undeniably useful. His moral compass, while questionably aligned with Imperial doctrine, has not led him to heresy or sedition. Not yet, muttered someone in the middle tier. The Emperor judges by deeds, not potentials, Van rebuked sharply, and the deed before us is the salvation of billions of his subjects who would otherwise have perished. He turned his attention back to Peter. Tell me, Peter Parker, if you were permitted to continue serving the Imperium under inquisitorial supervision, would you swear loyalty to the Emperor and accept the limitations such service would impose? Peter considered the question carefully. I would swear to protect the people of the Imperium with all my ability. I would accept reasonable limitations on my actions, but I won't compromise my core principles. I won't kill unnecessarily, and I won't stand by while innocents suffer if I can prevent it. His honesty provoked another round of murmurs, some approving, others clearly hostile. A conditional oath, then, Vaughn observed. Not ideal, but perhaps workable given your unique circumstances. He addressed the conclave at large. The matter will be put to a vote. Those in favour of allowing Peter Parker to continue his service under strict inquisitorial supervision, make your position known. Lights appeared before each Inquisitor, some gleaming green for approval, others red for rejection. Peter watched anxiously as the tally fluctuated, neither side gaining a clear majority. The conclave appears divided, Van announced after a moment. In such cases, tradition grants the presiding Lord Inquisitor the deciding vote. He fixed Peter with a penetrating stare. Before I cast my vote, I would hear from Inquisitor Dana. She has worked most closely with the subject and has the most informed perspective on his potential value and risks. Dana rose from her seat, her expression neutral, but her posture radiating authority. Lord Inquisitor, honoured colleagues, I have observed Peter Parker for 4 months in various combat and investigative scenarios. I have tested his abilities, his resilience, and his moral character. I have witnessed him face horrors that would break most men and emerge with his sanity and principles intact. She paused, surveying the chamber before continuing. The Imperium faces unprecedented threats on all fronts. The Tyrannid hive fleets advance from the galactic rim. The forces of chaos grow bolder in the wake of the Psychotry Maledictum. Necron tomb worlds awaken with increasing frequency. We cannot afford to discard a potentially valuable asset due to doctrinal inflexibility. You speak of pragmatism. Dana interrupted an Inquisitor whose fate was concealed behind a featureless mask. But at what cost? Accept one deviation, and others follow. The slope is treacherous. With respect, Lord Bane, the Imperium has always adapted when necessary. The Primus Marines, the acceptance of sanctioned psychers, the formation of the Sisters of Battle after the Age of Apostasy. Adaptation is not heresy when it serves the Emperor's greater purpose. And what purpose does this anomaly serve? Demanded a harsh voice from the upper tier. Dana's response was immediate and firm. Hope, Lord Kryman. He provides hope to those who have forgotten what it means to believe in heroes rather than merely obey out of fear. He reminds us that the Imperium protects, not simply punishes. In these dark times, such hope may prove as valuable as any weapon in our arsenal. A profound silence fell over the chamber as her words resonated with even the most hardened Inquisitors. For all their ruthlessness, they were still human, and somewhere deep within, they remembered the ideals that had first led them to don the inquisitorial rosette. Lord Inquisitor Vaughn broke the silence, his voice thoughtful. "Well spoken, Inquisitor Dana. You have given me much to consider." He straightened in his life support throne, addressing Peter directly. "Peter Parker, I have made my decision. You will continue to serve under Inquisitor Dana's direct supervision, with quarterly reviews of your activities by this conclave. You will be granted the status of interrogator, a position normally reserved for inquisitorial apprentices, which will afford you certain protections while maintaining necessary oversight." Relief washed over Peter, though he kept his expression neutral. Following Dana's earlier advice about decorum, however, Van continued, "There will be conditions. You will submit to regular psychological evaluation to ensure your continued mental stability in this reality. You will accept a submile tracking implant so that your whereabouts can be monitored at all times, and you will agree to certain operational parameters established by Inquisitor Dana and approved by this conclave." "I understand," Peter replied, "and I accept these conditions." "Very well." Van made a gesture and a servitor approached Peter with a small silver case. "This is the rosette of an interrogator. It marks you as an agent of the Inquisition with all the responsibilities and limited authority that entails. Bear it with honor, Peter Parker, and remember that you serve the greatest endeavor in human history, the preservation of mankind against a hostile universe." Peter accepted the case, opening it to reveal a stylized eye worked in silver and set with small gemstones. It felt surprisingly heavy in his hand, weighted with significance beyond its physical mass. "The conclave is concluded," Van announced. "Inquisitor Dana, you will report to my chambers in 1 hour to discuss the operational parameters of your newest agent. The rest of you are dismissed." As the Inquisitors filed out of the chamber, many casting curious or suspicious glances at Peter, Dana approached the Ds. Her expression revealed nothing, but Peter thought he detected a certain satisfaction in her bearing. "Congratulations, Interrogator Parker," she said formally. "You have been granted a rare privilege. Few outsiders are ever accepted into the ranks of the Inquisition, even at a junior level." "I'm honored," Peter replied, meaning it despite his misgivings about some of the Inquisition's methods. "Though I have to admit I didn't expect this outcome. The Emperor works in mysterious ways." Dana gestured toward the exit. "Come, we have much to prepare before our next assignment. The forces of disorder never rest, and neither can we." As they left the conclave chamber, Peter felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders, heavier than ever before. He was no longer simply a visitor in this grim future, trying to survive until he found a way, a home. He was now an official agent of its most powerful organization, sworn to protect a civilization, both magnificent and monstrous in its complexity. With great power comes great responsibility. Uncle Ben's words had guided him through countless challenges in his own reality. Now they would guide him through the darkness of the 41st millennium, where the stakes were higher and the moral choices more difficult than he had ever imagined. But perhaps, just perhaps, he could bring a little light to this grim, dark future. One act of mercy, one saved life, one moment of hope at a time. 6 months later, the hive world of Carrick Prime burned. Chaos cultists had risen in bloody rebellion, summoning demons from the warp to aid their insurrection. Imperial forces fought a desperate holding action, trying to contain the spread of corruption while civilians fled in terror. The sky was split by unnatural storms, lightning in impossible colours illuminating the carnage below. Through this apocalyptic landscape swung a figure in red and blue, moving within human grace between burning spires. Spider-Man, now a recognized agent of the Inquisition, coordinated evacuation efforts while engaging cultist leaders and demonic entities with equal determination. His costume had evolved during his time in the Imperium. Armored plates reinforced vulnerable areas integrated with the flexible material without limiting his mobility. His web shooters had been enhanced by Megastelphin, incorporating elements of Imperial technology to increase their effectiveness against warp-spawned threats. A small inquisitorial rosette was affixed to his belt, marking his official status. Evacuation route Gamma is compromised. He reported through his calm bead as he webbed a group of cultists to the side of a hab block. Don Incursion at the manufacturing plaza requesting Sororita's support. Confirmed. Interrogator Parker came the response from the command center. Battle Sisters on Route 2. Your position. Hold the line until they arrive. Copy that. Though I'd appreciate if they'd hurry. These guys aren't exactly the waiting type. As if summoned by his words, a massive form materialized in the plaza below. It stood 3 times the height of a man, its body a grotesque fusion of muscle, khitan, and brass. Horns curled from its bestial head, and its clawed hands clutched a massive axe that smouldered with unnatural heat. A bloodletter, a daemon of corn brought into real space by the cultists' rituals. Okay, this day just keeps getting better, Peter muttered, dropping to street level to face the demon. His spider sense screamed constant warnings, recognizing the creature as a threat beyond normal parameters. The bloodletter roared, the sound causing nearby windows to shatter and blood to seep from the ears of cultists too close to its manifestation. It fixed burning eyes on Peter, recognizing him as a worthy opponent. Blood for the blood god, it bellowed, its voice like metal grinding against stone. Skulls for the skull throne. You know, I've met some chatty supervillains in my time, but you guys really need to work on your material, Peter replied, circling the demon wearily. His enhanced agility would keep him safe from direct attacks, but one solid hit from that axe would end him regardless of his powers. The daemon charged, moving with surprising speed for its size. Peter leapt over its swinging axe, firing webs at its eyes to blind it temporarily. The webs sizzled and melted against the demon's burning gaze, but they bought him precious seconds to maneuver. He landed on the daemon's back, striking at vulnerable points with precision blows. Each impact would have crippled a human opponent, but against the warp-spawned entity, they merely caused it to roar in annoyance. It reached back with clawed hands, trying to dislodge the irritant on its back. Peter avoided the grasping claws, continuing to strike and retreat in a hit-and-run strategy. He knew he couldn't defeat the daemon through physical damage alone. The Ordo Malus training he had received emphasized that demons were fundamentally creatures of the warp, anchored to real space through rituals and sacrifices. Disrupt that anchor, and they could be banished back to their immaterial realm. He spotted the source. A circle of cultists maintaining a ritual around a blood-soaked altar. Their chanting rose and fell in time with the demon's movements, their bodies swaying in unnatural synchronicity. Found the problem. He voxed. Ritual circle maintaining the manifestation. I'm moving to disrupt it. Negative interrogator, came Dana's voice, tense with concern. The psychic backlash could kill you. Wait for the sisters. No time, Peter replied, leaping from the demon's back as it finally managed to swipe at him. These people will die if that thing stays materialized any longer. He swung in a wide arc, building momentum before releasing his web line at the apex of his swing. He sailed through the air directly toward the circle of cultists. The daemon bellowed in rage, sensing his intent, and hurled its axe with devastating force. Peter's spider sense flared, giving him the split-second warning he needed to twist in midair. The axe passed beneath him, close enough that he felt its unnatural heat scorch his costume. It embedded itself in the ferrocrete wall behind him, the impact sending cracks racing through the entire structure. He landed in the center of the ritual circle, immediately engaging the cultists with precise non-lethal strikes. They fought back with ritual daggers and uncoordinated psychic attacks, but they were no match for his speed and training. Within seconds, half were unconscious or restrained with webbing. The remaining cultists redoubled their chanting, their eyes rolling back to show only whites as they channeled warp energies through their frail human forms. The daemon roared in fury, charging toward the disrupted ritual with clear intent to slaughter everyone present, including its own worshippers. Peter saw his opportunity. The ritual was weakened, but not broken. The daemon was still manifested, but growing unstable, its form flickering at the edges as its anchor to real space degraded. It needed something to push it over the edge to sever the final connections, keeping it in the material universe. He remembered the teachings of Inquisitor Donna and the Ordo Malus adepts who had briefed him on demonic entities, faith, will, symbols of imperial authority. These things were anathema to creatures of the warp, especially when wielded by those with the strength of conviction to back them up. Peter had never been particularly religious, not in his home reality, and not in the Imperium, but he had conviction. He believed in protection, in responsibility, in the fundamental right of people to live free from terror. And in the Imperium, he had seen that such beliefs, when focused with sufficient intensity, could have tangible power. He reached for the inquisitorial rosette at his belt, the symbol of his authority and his oath to protect humanity in this reality. As the daemon bore down on him, axe recovered and raised high. He held the rosette before him like a ward. By the authority of the God Emperor of mankind, he shouted, the words feeling strange yet right on his lips. I banish you back to the hell you came from. The rosette flared with golden light, far brighter than it should have been capable of producing. The daemon shrieked, a sound that existed as much in the mind as in the air, causing blood to run from Peter's nose and ears. It raised its axe for a killing blow, fighting against the pull of the weakened ritual. In that moment, the plaza was bathed in the distinctive sound of bolter fire. A squad of Sisters of Battle had arrived, their power armor gleaming in the unnatural light, their weapons spitting mass-reactive shells at the daemon and remaining cultists. Their voices raised in battle hymns, adding their faith to Peter's desperate stand. The combined assault was too much for the weakened demon. With a final howl of frustrated rage, its form unravelled, collapsing in on itself as it was dragged back into the immaterium. The cultists screamed as the backlash of the failed ritual tore through them, reducing them to smouldering husks in an instant. Peter staggered, the psychic backlash hitting him like a physical blow. His enhanced physiology and the protection of the rosette spared him the cultist's fate, but blood flowed freely from his nose and ears. His vision swam, darkness encroaching at the edges as he fought to remain conscious. The leader of the sister squad approached, her helmet removed to reveal a face of austere beauty marked with ritual scars. To Peter's surprise, it was Sister Amalia, who had been reassigned after the Helios Primus operation. Interrogator Parker, she acknowledged, her tone respectful if not warm. Your actions were reckless but effective. The daemon is banished. Just doing my job, Peter managed, wiping blood from his face. Didn't expect to see you here, sister. The Emperor places his servants where they are needed. Amalia offered a gauntleted hand, helping him to his feet. It seems our paths are destined to cross in times of crisis. Lucky me, Peter quipped, then winced as pain lanced through his head. Is the evacuation proceeding? Affirmative. The civilians from this sector have been moved to the designated safety zones. Imperial Guard forces are establishing a cordon to prevent further cult activity. Peter nodded, relieved. That had been his primary concern from the start, ensuring that innocent people escaped the conflict with their lives and souls intact. The Inquisition had other priorities, of course, focused on rooting out the source of the corruption and preventing its spread. But Dana had given him considerable latitude in his operations, recognizing that his unique abilities made him especially effective at evacuation and civilian protection. Inquisitor Dana requests your presence at the command center, Amala informed him. New intelligence has arrived regarding the source of the cult uprising. Tell her I'm on my way. Peter checked his web shooters, finding them nearly depleted after the intense combat. As soon as I restock my supplies. Amalia nodded once, then rejoined her squad as they moved to secure the area. Peter watched them go, struck by the contrast between their methodical efficiency and the chaotic nature of the threat they faced. The Imperium fought darkness with order, terror with faith, chaos with unyielding discipline. It was not his way, not entirely, but he had come to respect its effectiveness, even as he maintained his own moral boundaries. He made his way to a designated resupply point where an Adeptus Mechanicus servitor waited with replacement web fluid canisters and emergency medical supplies. As he treated his injuries and reloaded his web shooters, he reflected on the month since the Conclave's judgment. He had served as Interrogator Parker, agent of the Inquisition, through a dozen operations across multiple systems. He had faced cultists, xenos, and warp entities with the same determination he had once brought to battles against supervillains in New York. He had saved countless lives while maintaining his own moral code, even in a universe that considered mercy a weakness. And through it all, he had searched for a way home. The possibility of return to his own reality was never far from his thoughts. Magos Delphine had promised to research the theoretical physics involved, though the tech priest warned that such cross-dimensional travel was far beyond even the Mechanicus understanding. Inquisitor Dana had granted him access to certain restricted archives, containing information on warp anomalies and reality distortions, though she did so with obvious reluctance, perhaps fearing that she might lose her most valuable agent. But for now, duty called. Peter finished his preparations and swung toward the command center, a fortified bastion established in what had once been the planetary governor's palace. The grand architecture had been repurposed for war, its decorative elements replaced by weapon emplacements and shield generators. Imperial Guard troops patrolled the perimeter while Sentinel walkers stood vigil at key approaches. Inquisitor Dana awaited him in the strategic planning chamber, surrounded by holithic displays showing the progress of the conflict across the Hive City. Her face bore new scars since their first meeting, and her augment implants had been upgraded with more advanced models. The weight of her responsibilities had etched itself deeper into her features, but her eyes remained as sharp and determined as ever. "Interrogator," she acknowledged as he entered. "Your encounter with the Bloodletter is already being reported throughout the Imperial forces. It seems you have developed quite a reputation." "Not intentionally," Peter replied, removing his mask. His face beneath was leaner than when he had first arrived in this reality, marked by the hardships he had endured. "What's the situation?" Dana gestured to the central holithic display, which showed a massive structure in the industrial sector of the Hive. "This is the primary forge complex. According to intelligence gathered from captured cultists, their leaders have taken refuge in the central foundry. They are preparing a ritual of unprecedented scale, drawing on the psychic potential of thousands of sacrifices. What's their endgame? The summoning of a greater daemon, possibly even a daemon prince." Dana's expression was grim. If they succeed, this entire system could be lost to chaos. The corruption would spread to neighbouring worlds before we could establish an effective quarantine. Peter studied the holithic model, noting defensive positions and potential access points. Frontal assault would be suicide. They'll have corrupted servitors and daemon engines guarding every approach, not to mention whatever fell powers their leaders can call upon. Precisely. Which is why I am not ordering a frontal assault. Dana manipulated the display, highlighting a network of maintenance tunnels running beneath the forge complex. These tunnels were designed to allow tech priests access to the foundry's geothermal taps. They are narrow, partially flooded, and heavily shielded against scanning. The cultists may not know they exist, or may consider them too difficult to access. Let me guess. I'm going in alone through the tunnels while the main force creates a diversion at the primary gates. Dana nodded. Your abilities make you uniquely suited for this approach. You can navigate the tunnels faster and more quietly than any of my other agents. Your objective will be to disrupt the ritual before it can be completed, then signal for the main assault force to enter and mop up the remaining cultists. And if I encounter their leaders, you have faced worse and prevailed. Dana's voice softened slightly. But do not take unnecessary risks, Peter. Your value to the Imperium has only increased with time. I would not see that value squandered through overconfidence or misplaced heroism. Peter recognized the concern behind her formal language. In the months of their association, a bond had formed between them. Not quite friendship, but something more than mere professional respect. They remained very different people with fundamentally different worldviews, but they had come to understand and value each other's strengths. "I'll be careful," he promised. "But I won't leave anyone behind if I can help them. There may be prisoners, forced labourers, even children in that facility." "Save those you can," Dana agreed. "But remember that the ritual must be stopped at all costs. If the greater daemon manifests, millions will die, not just those currently in the forge complex." "Understood." Peter pulled his mask back on, adjusting it with practiced ease. "When do I move out?" "Immediately. The assault forces will begin their diversion in 30 minutes. That should give you time to penetrate the tunnels and reach the ritual chamber." She handed him a small device, an inquisitorial sigil inscribed with microscopic wards and prayers. "Carry this. It may provide some protection against the warp energies you will encounter." Peter accepted the sigil, tucking it securely into a pouch on his belt. "Any final words of wisdom before I head into the daemon-infested foundry of doom?" Dana's lips curved in a rare smile. "Only this. The Emperor protects Peter Parker. Whether you believe in him or not, he believes in you. I have seen it in the way fate bends around you, in the impossible victories you have achieved. There is purpose in your presence here, a purpose perhaps greater than either of us can comprehend." "No pressure then," Peter quipped, though her words affected him more deeply than he let on. "I'll see you after the mission, Inquisitor. Indeed you will." Her certainty was comforting, even if they both knew it might be misplaced. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there were no guarantees, only duty and the hope of victory against impossible odds. Peter left the command center, swinging through the war-torn city toward the forge complex. Below him, Imperial Guard regiments moved into position for the coming assault. Their tanks and artillery pieces arrayed in battle formation. Priests moved among the troops, offering blessings and leading prayers for the Emperor's protection. Storm clouds gathered above the forge complex, unnatural energies distorting the weather patterns. As the ritual progressed, he reached the entrance to the maintenance tunnels, a nondescript access hatch in an abandoned section of the underhive. It was secured with ancient mechanical blocks, their complexity a testament to the Mechanicus' paranoia about their geothermal technology. For Peter, with his enhanced strength and agility, they presented only a minor challenge. The tunnels beyond were dark, lit only by the occasional lumen strip that had survived centuries of neglect. The air was hot and sulphurous, drawn up from the planet's core to power the foundry above. Condensation dripped from rusted pipes, forming puddles on the uneven floor. The space was claustrophobic, barely wide enough for a normal human to navigate comfortably. Peter moved with careful haste, aware of the minutes ticking away. His spider sense remained relatively quiet, suggesting that the tunnels were indeed free of cultist presence. The only life he encountered was the occasional rad-mutated rodents that scattered at his approach, their eyes glowing with unhealthy bioluminescence. As he progressed deeper into the tunnel network, the air grew hotter, and the walls vibrated with the activity of the forge above. He could hear the rhythmic pounding of machinery, though whether it still served its original purpose or had been repurposed for the cultists' dark ritual, he couldn't tell. Finally, he reached a vertical shaft that would take him directly into the foundry complex. Steam billowed from vents in its sides, and the metal rungs of its ladder were hot to the touch, even through his gloves. He climbed swiftly, using his wall-crawling abilities to bypass sections where the ladder had degraded beyond safety. At the top of the shaft, a heavy maintenance hatch blocked his path. Peter pressed his ear against it, enhanced hearing picking up sounds beyond the clank of machinery, the hiss of molten metal being poured, and underlying it all, a rhythmic chanting in a language that hurt his mind to hear. He checked the chronometer built into his web shooter. 5 minutes until the diversion began. He would need to be in position by then, ready to strike at the heart of the ritual when the cultist's attention was divided. With careful precision, he applied pressure to the hatch, testing its resistance. It was secured from the other side, but decades of heat and corrosion had weakened its locking mechanism. A firm push with his enhanced strength was enough to break it free without making enough noise to alert those beyond. The scene that greeted him as he slipped through the hatch was a vision of industrial hell transformed into a temple of chaos. The massive foundry floor, once dedicated to the production of machinery and weapons for the Imperium, had been reshaped into a ritual site of nightmarish proportions. The great smelting vats now contained bubbling mixtures that were definitely not molten metal, their surfaces crawling with impossible colours and shapes that hurt the eye to focus on. Cultists by the hundreds worked throughout the space, some attending to the corrupted machinery, others arranged in concentric circles around a central dais, where the ritual leaders conducted their dark ceremony. Many of the cultists showed signs of mutation, their bodies warped by exposure to warp energies. Others appeared outwardly normal, save for the fevered light in their eyes and the cult markings carved into their flesh. On the dais itself stood 5 figures in elaborate robes inscribed with forbidden symbols. Their faces were hidden behind masks fashioned from human skin and metal, and they moved with the precise gestures of those performing a carefully choreographed ritual. Before them, suspended in chains above a pit of swirling energy, hung dozens of sacrificial victims, still alive and conscious, their terror feeding the growing power of the ritual. Peter's heart raced as he took in the scale of the horror before him. This was beyond anything he had faced before, a corruption so profound that it threatened to break reality itself. For a moment, doubt crept in. How could he? One man hoped to stop something of this magnitude. Then he remembered Dana's words. The Emperor protects. Whether that meant an actual divine figure watching over humanity, or simply the collective will and determination of those who fought against the darkness, it didn't matter. What mattered was that he was here with the power and the responsibility to act. He scanned the foundry, formulating a plan. The ritual leaders were the primary target, but they were surrounded by concentric rings of cultists who would defend them with fanatical devotion. The sacrificial victims needed to be freed, but doing so prematurely might alert the entire complex to his presence. And somewhere in this twisted place, the cult's true leader would be watching, directing the ceremony from the shadows. His spider sense suddenly flared, a warning of imminent danger so intense that he moved on pure instinct, leaping from his position as a wave of corrupted prometheum washed over the spot where he had been crouching. He twisted in midair, landing on the side of a massive support column, and looked up to see his attacker. It was a tech priest, or what had once been a tech priest. Its mechanical limbs had been fused with demonic entities, warp energy crackling between augment components. Its face was a horror of metal and mutated flesh, eyes replaced by scanning lenses that glowed with unholy light. The spider, it intoned, its voice a distorted amalgam of machine code and demonic whispers. The outsider, the anomaly. Your presence was foreseen, your interference calculated. The probability matrix accounts for your disruption. Sorry to be so predictable, Peter replied, dodging as the corrupted tech priest fired a beam of warp-infused energy from a weapon grafted to its arm. Maybe I should work on being more spontaneous. His quip covered genuine concern. If they had anticipated his coming, then the entire mission might be compromised. The diversion might be expected, the tunnel route known. He needed to accelerate his timetable to strike before they could fully prepare for him. As if on cue, the sound of distant explosions echoed through the foundry. The diversionary attack had begun, right on schedule. The cultists nearest the main entrances moved to defensive positions, drawing weapons and activating corrupted machinery. The ritual leaders, however, continued their ceremony without pause, their chanting growing more intense. Peter took advantage of the momentary confusion to launch his attack. He fired webs at the corrupted tech priest, temporarily blinding its scanning lenses, then propelled himself toward the central dais. His path took him directly over the heads of the outer circle of cultists, who looked up in surprise as the red and blue figure soared above them. Alarm cries went up immediately and las fire peppered the air around him. Peter's spider sense guided him through the deadly barrage, his body twisting and contorting in ways that would be impossible for a normal human. He landed on the edge of the dais, directly confronting the ritual leaders. "Evening, gentlemen," he greeted them, his casual tone belying the tension in his muscles. "I think this ceremony has gone on long enough. Why don't we call it a night before someone gets hurt?" The leaders did not respond verbally. Instead, they raised their hands in unison, releasing a wave of warp energy that struck Peter like a physical blow. He felt the corruption trying to seep into his body to twist his DNA and warp his mind. The inquisitorial sigil at his belt flared with golden light, creating a barrier that blunted the worst of the effect, but pain still lanced through every nerve. Gritting his teeth against the agony, Peter launched himself at the nearest ritual leader. His fist connected with the cultist's mask, shattering it to reveal a face no longer recognizably human beneath. The blow sent the cultist staggering back, disrupting the precise formation of the ritual circle. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The swirling energies above the sacrifice pit destabilized, lashing out with tendrils of corrupt power. Several cultists in the inner circle were struck, their bodies dissolving into screaming masses of mutating flesh. The remaining ritual leaders fought to regain control, their chanting becoming desperate and discordant. Peter pressed his advantage, engaging the ritual leaders in close combat, where their warp-based attacks were less effective. His enhanced strength and agility made him more than a match for their physical forms, corrupted though they were. One by one, he incapacitated them, using precision strikes to render them unconscious or web cocoons to immobilize them completely. The last ritual leader, seemingly the most powerful, drew a blade that pulsed with unnatural energies. It slashed at Peter with unnatural speed, the blade leaving trails of distorted reality in its wake. Peter dodged the initial strike, but the blade caught him across the arm on the backswing, cutting through his costume and into the flesh beneath. Pain unlike anything he had experienced before flooded his system. This was not mere physical damage, but a corruption that attacked his very soul. He felt the wound trying to spread to convert his cells into something alien and horrific. Only his unique physiology and the protective influence of the inquisitorial sigil prevented immediate corruption. Fighting through the pain, Peter fired a web directly into the cultist's face, then followed with a powerful kick that sent the robed figure flying backward into the pit of swirling energy. The cultist's scream was cut short as the unstable warp energies consumed it, leaving nothing behind but a brief flare of impossible colours. With the ritual leaders neutralized, Peter turned his attention to the sacrificial victims suspended above the pit. They hung in a complex arrangement of chains and hooks positioned to channel their life energy into the ritual, their eyes wide with terror and pain, fixed on him with desperate hope. "Hang on," he called to them, an unfortunate choice of words given their situation. "I'm going to get you out of there." Before he could act, however, a new presence made itself known. The air at the far end of the foundry distorted, reality itself seeming to bend and tear. Through this distortion stepped a figure of such wrongness that Peter's mind initially refused to properly process what he was seeing. It was humanoid in its basic shape, but far larger than any human, standing perhaps 4 mem tall. Its body was encased in power armor of ancient design, twisted and reshaped by warp exposure until it barely resembled its original form. Symbols of chaos were burned into the ceramite, glowing with internal fire. The helmet was a grotesque parody of a Statist design, with horns curling from its sides and vision slits that leaked smoky essence. "A Chaos Space Marine," Peter breathed, recognizing the corrupted transhuman warrior from briefings he'd received. Not merely a cultist or even a lesser demon, but one of the Emperor's own creations turned against humanity. Empowered by millennia of warp exposure and demonic favor, the Chaos Marine surveyed the disrupted ritual site, its gaze finally settling on Peter. When it spoke, its voice was a rumbling bass that seemed to vibrate the very air. "The Spider-Man," it said, the name sounding obscene in its mouth, the anomaly from another reality. "I have watched your progress with interest." "Always nice to meet a fan," Peter replied, buying time as he assessed this new threat. His previous encounters had taught him that even loyal space marines were beyond his strength, capable of feats that strained even his enhanced abilities. Their corrupted counterparts were often even more dangerous, empowered by the dark gods they served. "You think yourself a hero," the Chaos Marine continued, advancing with measured steps that made the foundry floor tremble. "Playing at salvation in a galaxy already. Damned! How amusing! How futile!" Peter's spider sense screamed a warning as the Marine suddenly accelerated, crossing the intervening space with transhuman speed. A power fist crackled with corrupt energy as it swung toward him, aiming to reduce him to paste with a single blow. He leapt upward, the fist passing beneath him and smashing into the daze where he had stood. The stone structure shattered, fragments flying in all directions. Peter fired webs at the Marine's helmet, aiming to blind it temporarily, but the strands sizzled and melted against some form of energy field surrounding the armor. "Conventional attacks will not avail you, insect," the Marine growled, reaching up with impossible speed to grab Peter's ankle as he descended. The armored gauntlet closed with crushing force, and Peter felt bones crack despite his enhanced durability. With a casual flick, the Marine hurled him across the foundry to crash into a smelting vat, denting the adamantium hull with the impact. Pain lanced through Peter's body as he pulled himself from the wreckage. His right ankle was shattered, and he could feel internal injuries from the impact. His healing factor was already working to repair the damage, but it would take time he did not have. The Chaos Marine stalked toward him, apparently in no hurry, confident in its superiority. "Your presence in this reality is an aberration," it said, "a mistake I shall correct. But first, you will witness the culmination of centuries of planning. The ritual may be disrupted, but not stopped. The conduit is open, the way is prepared." It gestured, and the swirling energies in the pit began to coalesce, taking shape despite the absence of the ritual leaders. The sacrificial victims screamed as their life force was forcibly drained, their bodies withering like husks in seconds. The warp energies pulsed, a heartbeat of corruption that sent tremors through the foundry. "Behold the coming of my master," the Chaos Marine intoned, raising its arms in supplication, "Lord of change, architect of fate. He comes to remake this world in his image to begin the transformation that will spread across the stars." Peter knew he had to act despite his injuries. If a greater daemon of Sinch manifested, not just this world, but the entire system would be lost. The corruption would spread like a cancer, consuming everything in its path. He forced himself to his feet, ignoring the agony of his shattered ankle. His right web shooter was damaged from the impact, but the left remained functional. It would have to be enough. The Chaos Marine turned to him, contempt evident even through its expressionless helmet. "Still, you persist. Your tenacity would be admirable if it were not so pathetic. What hope do you have against a servant of the dark gods?" "I'm not big on hope," Peter replied, limping forward. "I prefer responsibility, and right now, my responsibility is to stop you from destroying this world." The Marine laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "And how will you accomplish this, broken as you are?" Peter glanced at the swirling energies in the pit, then at the massive chains suspending the Founder's heaviest equipment from the ceiling. A plan formed, desperate, but possibly effective. By using something you don't understand, he said. The power of applied physics. Before the Marine could respond, Peter fired his remaining web shooter at the ceiling, creating a line that he used to swing directly over the warp pit. The corrupted energy reached for him, tendrils of power trying to latch onto his soul, but the inquisitorial sigil at his belt flared brighter, keeping the worst at bay. At the apex of his swing, he fired a web but one of the massive chain mechanisms that controlled the Foundry's heaviest lifting equipment. With a powerful yank, he disengaged the safety locks, causing a counterweight system to activate. A massive crucible of molten metal heated to temperatures that could melt. Even ceramite began to swing on its tracks directly toward the pit. The Chaos Marine realized his intent too late. "No!" it roared, charging forward, but the distance was too great even for its transhuman speed. The crucible tipped, pouring tons of molten metal directly into the warp pit. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. Warp energy and superheated metal collided, creating an explosion that shook the entire Foundry complex. The delicate balance of the ritual was completely destroyed. The carefully constructed conduit between real space and the warp collapsing in on itself. The backlash struck the Chaos Marine like a physical blow, sending it staggering backward. Portions of its armor began to melt and warp, not from the heat, but from the uncontrolled warp energies seeking any outlet. It screamed, a sound of rage and pain that transcended humanity. Peter was thrown clear by the explosion, landing heavily on a catwalk above the main Foundry floor. His ears rang and new injuries added their chorus to the symphony of pain already playing through his body. But he forced himself to focus to witness the results of his desperate gambit. The warp pit imploded, collapsing in on itself with a sound that existed more in the mind than in physical reality. The Chaos Marine was caught in the collapsing field, its armor cracking as the conflicting energies tore at its corrupted form. With a final howl of defiance, it was pulled into the imploding vortex, disappearing from reality as the portal sealed itself with a thunderclap of displaced air. Silence fell over the Foundry, broken only by the distant sounds of battle as Imperial forces engaged the remaining cultists at the complex's perimeter. The surviving sacrificial victims hung limply in their chains, unconscious but alive, their connection to the failed ritual severed by its collapse. Peter dragged himself to his feet, using the catwalk railing for support. His costume was in tatters, revealing the numerous injuries beneath. Blood ran freely from a gash on his forehead, partially obscuring his vision. His right ankle throbbed with each heartbeat, the bones slowly knitting together thanks to his enhanced healing. "Inquisitor Dana," he voxed, his voice from smoke and exertion. "Target neutralized. Ritual disrupted. Request immediate support for survivor extraction." "Confirmed, Interrogator," came the response. Dana's voice tense with concern. "Extraction teams are inbound." "Status of the Chaos Marine banished back to whatever hell it came from," Peter replied, allowing himself to slide down to a sitting position on the catwalk, along with whatever it was trying to summon. "Well done, Peter," Dana said, dropping formal titles in a rare display of emotion. "The Emperor protects." "Indeed." "Yeah," Peter murmured, watching as Imperial forces began to secure the Foundry entrance, stormtroopers and Sisters of Battle moving with disciplined precision. "I guess he does." As consciousness began to fade, Peter found himself thinking not of the Emperor or the Imperium, but of a simple apartment in Queens, of Aunt May, and friends he had left behind. For all the purpose he had found in this grim future, for all the good he had done, a part of him still longed for home. Perhaps that was the true test of heroism in the 41st millennium, to serve with all your heart while carrying the weight of what you had lost, to find meaning in duty without surrendering to despair, to be human in an inhuman age, as darkness claimed him. Peter Parker, Spider-Man, interrogator of the Holy Inquisition, allowed himself a small smile. Whatever came next, he would face it, as he had faced everything in his life. With great power comes great responsibility. In the depths of the inquisitorial fortress on Nemesis Tessa, a chamber existed that few knew of and fewer still had access to. Its walls were lined with technologies, both ancient and alien, salvaged from 1,000 worlds across 10,000 years. Devices of unknown purpose hummed with energies that defied conventional understanding. Containment fields shimmered around artifacts too dangerous to be exposed to open air. Here in this sanctum of forbidden knowledge, Inquisitor Dana stood before a holithic display that showed a three-dimensional model of reality itself, or at least humanity's limited understanding of it. Multiple universes were represented as overlapping spheres, the barriers between them visualized as membranes of translucent light. The calculations are complete. Inquisitor announced Magos Delin, his meshindrites interfacing directly with the arcane machinery. Based on the data gathered from Interrogator Parker's unique quantum signature, we have identified his universe of origin with 87.3% certainty. Dana studied the display, her augment eye whirring as it processed the complex information, and the means of return theoretical only but promising. Delphin manipulated the display, highlighting a particular intersection between universal membranes. The warp storm in the Cadian sector has created a unique distortion in the fabric of reality. If properly harnessed, it could serve as a conduit between dimensions. The technology required would be problematic but not impossible to construct. Problematic in what way? The tech priest hesitated. An unusual display of uncertainty from one of the Mechanicus. It would require the adaptation of certain Xenos technologies, specifically Necron phase technology, combined with LR webway principles. The theological implications alone would be significant. I see. Dana's expression remained neutral, betraying nothing of her thoughts and the risks. Catastrophic dimensional collapse at worst, at best a one-way journey with no guarantee of precise targeting. Interrogator Parker might find himself in his home reality or in another entirely or lost between dimensions for eternity. Dana was silent for a long moment, weighing options and consequences with the calculated precision that had made her one of the Inquisition's most effective agents. Finally she spoke. Continue your research, Magos. Refine the calculations. Improve the probability of success and Interrogator Parker. Should he be informed of our progress? Again, Dana paused before answering. Not yet. He has become too valuable an asset to risk losing to false hope. Let him continue his service until we can offer him a genuine choice, not merely a suicidal gamble. As you wish, Inquisitor, Delphin began shutting down the display, his meshindrites withdrawing from the interface ports. Though I feel compelled to note that withholding this information may damage the trust he has placed in you. Trust is a luxury in our line of work, Magos, Dana replied, her voice hardening. The Imperium's needs must come before personal considerations. Yet, even as she spoke the words, a flicker of doubt crossed her face. In the months since Peter Parker had arrived in their reality, he had changed things, changed people, changed her, though she would scarcely admit it even to herself. His stubborn adherence to principles that the Imperium had long ago sacrificed on the altar of necessity had forced her to reconsider truths she had held as absolute. Perhaps in time she would tell him of this research, of the possibility, however remote, of return to his home. Perhaps she would even help him achieve it despite the loss to the Imperium, but not yet. Not while the forces of chaos grew stronger, not while Xenos threats pressed in from all sides. Not while humanity needed every hero it could find, even those who came from beyond the boundaries of their reality. For now, Peter Parker would remain Spider-Man, interrogator of the Holy Inquisition, defender of humanity in its darkest hour. And perhaps in serving that role, he would find a purpose great enough to ease the pain of displacement, to make bearable the weight of responsibility that had followed him across dimensions. In the grim darkness of the far future, there was only war. But where Spider-Man swung through the Gothic spires of embattled hive cities, there was also something else, something the Imperium had nearly forgotten in its 10,000 years of endless conflict. There was hope.